Why do a showcase of local talent in Northeast Tennessee? We live in an area rich with creativity, an area where people have an intense bond with their heritage and with nature. TNet wants to capture a peek into who we are now. Join us on the first Thursdays of each month for a showcase of talent at the Bonnie Kate Theater in Elizabethton, Tennessee, where creatives reveal their passions, interact with the audience, and perform. Each session will be hosted by Julie Williams and recorded live for upload to YouTube. Don't miss this.
Go ahead and put my guitar around me. I feel like I could talk better with it. So welcome out to the first ever Tennessee showcase, okay? So tonight we have a very special lineup, but before, I need to tell you this about the Bonnie Kate. I'm Julie Williams, and I'll be the host for tonight. And a little bit of history about the Bonnie Kate is it was opened in the spring of 1926, and it was built in the colonial revival style of architecture, and it was owned by Olivia, or Ollie, Hogue Brown. She was a coal baroness from Bluefield, Virginia. It opened to a full house, and I didn't even know this about the Bonnie Kate until I was researching. So it opened to a full house of 500 people. Right here in this auditorium, 500 people. And it was, the opening night was a silent film, and during the 30s and 40s, it was a live local music venue, and the show was called The Barrel of Fun, and there's many people still in the area that remembers this show being broadcast from here. Here's another fact I didn't know. It was broadcast by 2 separate radio stations, and the listening audience, they were estimated to be in the millions. So it wasn't just here in Little Carter County that the entertainment became more of a nation, like an East Coast, and of course in the South. But the Bonnie Kate was named after Catherine Sherrill Sevier, and she was a heroine of Carter County and the wife of the first governor of Tennessee, John Sevier. So she was nicknamed Bonnie Kate and had the reputation of a fine, fine woman. So I feel like that the history of this place can maybe be brought back through events like tonight, live performing arts type events. So I also want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I hope you have a wonderful time. Tom has asked me to perform several of, maybe just 2 or 3 songs of my originals, and we love to do that. I'd like to welcome to the stage with me my husband, John Gable. Give him a warm, warm welcome. You're going to be hearing me on and off throughout the night, but with him, this is his first, and I think he's going to get up later on in the show and play for one of the last songs. But we hope you enjoy. We've got a really good afternoon lined up for you, so I'll kick it off here. Tonight's theme is going to be military, and we love military. And veterans, we always, I actually played this song for Mr. Tom Swadley. He's going to be coming up here in a few minutes, but I kind of ran this one by him before it was ever a real getting put on the CD or through the copyright office or anything, because Tom's a veteran as well. And this is about from a woman's perspective, and maybe a mother, about what we have to go through when we raise babies and send them on their way. So I hope you all enjoy. a new life laying across my heart. I wanna hold you here forever, keep you safe and warm. And just before they took you down the hallway you in, I had a talk with you, son, and you'll hear these words again. Be brave, don't cry. You'll be back here in my arms in just a little while. And sometimes in this life you have to face the unknown, but with the good Lord by your side, you won't ever be alone. Always know your mama's gonna pray, so be brave. Years old, first day of school. Don't forget about the golden rule. You're making friends and you're making plans. No, I can't be there holding your hand, but I whispered in your ear before you walked through the door. Same words I told you the day you were born. Be brave, don't cry. You'll be back in my arms in just a little while. And sometimes in this life you have to face the unknown. With the good Lord by your side, you won't ever be alone. Always know your mama's gonna pray, so be brave. 18 years old, pen in hand, you're gonna sign away your life like Granddaddy did. Before being held, no turning back, headed for the plane. We both know things won't ever be the same, but you hugged my neck and you whispered in my ear same words I told you year after year. Be brave, Mama, don't cry. I'll be back in your arms in just a little while. And sometimes in this life you have to face the unknown. With the good Lord by your side, you won't ever be alone. Always know I'm gonna pray, so be brave. That's probably gonna always be one of my favorite songs. It's near and dear to my heart. I love our veterans, and I always try to dedicate that one to not just my daddy and my aunt, ones in my family, but also to my best friend's son. He's currently aboard the USS George H.W. Bush in Norfolk, Virginia, so that goes out to Tyler. And this next one I'll do is called Walking Away. It's pretty self-explanatory. A scorned woman, everybody's got to have one of those. sorry was heavy on me. After all said and done, tell the truth, you were the one who really wanted to be free. Now I'm walking away. Look at you now, you can't find a word to say. Even if you did, it would all be a little too late. I'm walking, baby, I'm walking away. I'm walking away. Look at you now, you can't find a word to say. Even if you did, it would all be a little too late. I'm walking, baby, I'm walking away. Look at you now, you can't find a word to say. Even if you did, it would all be a little too late. I'm walking, baby, I'm walking away. See, I told you that was self-explanatory, wasn't it? This next one, I'll do one more, and then I'll introduce our next guest, or our first guest coming up, actually. So, this is one that I wrote for a song competition for the state of Tennessee for their tourism campaign. It was kind of a luck of the draw if you got a spot for it, and I didn't even. It was the first, I think, 20 or 50 people or something like that to send in an email, and started at 11 o'clock. I don't think the computer was even turned on in time to make it, so, but this is a special one to me. Tells a story about where I'm from. Sitting here waiting on a train to come by. It's a lot like me, baby, it ain't ever on time. It's been a while since I've been back this way. I meant to leave, but I never meant to stay gone. So long, I've been gone. So long. And old Virginia didn't want me around. And the tall pines in Georgia made a lonesome sound. Up in Kentucky, even the grass is blue. But Tennessee, I'm gonna come back home to you. I'm coming home to you. I've been up and down the coast of Carolina, making my way back across the state line. The mountains are calling me, baby, won't you come back home? I meant to leave, but I never meant to stay gone. So long, I've been gone. So long, and
And old Virginia didn't want me around, and the tall pines in Georgia made a lonesome sound. Up in Kentucky, even the grass is blue, but Tennessee, I'm gonna come back home to you. I'm coming home to you. And old Virginia didn't want me around, and the tall pines in Georgia made a lonesome sound. Up in Kentucky, even the grass is blue, but Tennessee, I'm gonna come back home to you. I'm coming home to you. All right, now I'll go ahead and introduce our first performer of the night, Mr. Tony Marr. He's from Jonesboro, Tennessee. He's an awesome storyteller. Please make him welcome here at Bonnie Kate.
Hi, Julie.
Hello. Okay. Tony, got the pleasure of meeting you earlier in the week as we had a little kind of introduction. So it is so good to meet you, and I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I'll just introduce you as a storyteller from Jonesboro, Tennessee, but that's not really where you came from, is it?
It's not where I came from. No, it's where I claim home now, but I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, born and raised in Las Vegas.
Awesome. And so you've been here in the Tri-Cities area?
Oh, goodness. I came here in 1996 to go to college, and then after graduating college, moved back out west for about 5 years, and then have been here for good since 2005.
And you've done a lot of different types of, you're kind of like me, you have more than one job, I guess is a good way to put it. So you kind of do several different things. Tell me about.
Yeah, I do. I've done several different things over the course of my life. I have watched people pee into a cup for a living. Spent 2 summers doing that. It was a great. It was the worst job ever.
Yeah,
I always win whenever you're at a dinner party and you have the conversation who has the worst job ever. I win every time.
So you take that one.
I take that one. Yeah, I have been a lifeguard. I have been a soccer referee. I have been a pastor. I've been a musician. I have been an insurance agent. Yeah, I did that for a couple months. And now I'm a storyteller.
I think you have a common love that I do, though. And we were talking a little bit outside the other day, and I said, I just love people.
Yeah.
I love to make people smile. I love to get on their emotions. So you do the same through storytelling, correct?
Yes.
So you studied at ETSU, and you got your master's in storytelling there.
Yeah, I'm a literal master storyteller.
So
and I have the degree somewhere to prove it.
Somewhere buried in between, in watching someone pee in a cup and lifeguarding.
Yeah.
Okay, I do want to talk to you a little bit about a project that you have coming up. If you want to tell everybody out there and tell me more about it as well. As I said a few minutes ago, I love veterans. We talked about that the other day too. And so you have a passion for veterans and for people that have served the country. And tell me a little bit more about a project that you're.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I found myself at this beginning of a new chapter in my life, and trying to figure out what did I want to do with the next chapter of my story going forward. And was already in the storytelling community, in the storytelling world, and looking for ways that I could have an impact. I've been a pastor full-time for 20 years, and you have a great impact on the lives of people in that arena. And so now, doing storytelling, I was trying to figure out, how do I make an impact in the world around me that goes beyond just making people laugh for an evening on stage? How do I make a difference in the world and an impact on people's lives that I come in contact with and have the opportunity to work with? And I've always greatly respected and admired our military and our veterans. And one of the regrets that I have in my life is that I never served our country in the military. And by the time I realized that that was a regret of mine, it was too late. I was too old. No one would take me. And so I began to think, how can I serve them? If I can't serve our country in that capacity, how can I serve the veterans that have served us, served me, and served our country for so long? And so I began to explore the idea of telling their stories. And how can we tell these stories of our American heroes and preserve their stories, preserve their legacies, not only for our generation, but for many generations to come? And so I began just simply sitting down and doing interviews with veterans to try to tell their stories. And to date, I've done over 35 hours of interviews with veterans. And it has been some of the most rewarding and enriching work that I've ever done. And Tom and I together have been working on a project that we're hoping to launch out soon. And that's within our immediate radius of the Tri-Cities here. Within an hour's drive, there are over 120 VFW and American Legion post offices within an hour drive. What we would like to do.
When you told me that, I mean, I knew there was several in the area, but that kind of threw me back, and I've grown up here my whole entire life. So literally, and I was telling you about our specific post here in Elizabethton. I think any veterans will relate with you, and I think that they will immediately get a grasp for what you're doing and appreciate you, and probably even love you for helping them get their stories out. And you know, like you were talking the other day, you said, well, not, you know, this one guy said to you, not everybody's a real hero or saw like a lot of action. And what did you tell? I thought that was sweet what you said you had told to him, that you didn't have to be in the line of fire, something along the lines of that. Tell me a little bit about that, because
you didn't have to be across seas to be a hero.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's important. Just overall, these people did not know what they were signing up for when they signed up. So even though they didn't, maybe they weren't in a technical war zone or in a specific incident that would put their life on the line, they had no idea of that when they signed up. Yeah. So to me, the heroism of them just signing up and going on, you know, whatever happens type of thing, that's how I think we're on the same page of how you would view somebody. So it's not just war heroes that you're looking for to do these interviews, it's anyone.
Yeah, and
because everybody has a story with it.
Our plan with the project is to go into these posts, these American Legion offices, these VFW posts, VA hospitals, and conduct these interviews with veterans to come in and capture their stories, preserve their stories, and then take them back, work their stories, and turn their stories into a CD, a DVD, and a stage show, to go back and do that at the post so they can bring their families, their friends, and then give each of them a copy of that CD that tells their story.
Yes.
Of who they are, that can be passed down from generation to generation.
I think that is awesome, and I told you the other day after we met, I said, you have 100% of my support. I'll help you any way I can, and I think that you're going to get that kind of response from a lot of people. And
thank you.
I wish you very, very much success with this project, and I'll let you do your thing.
All right.
How's that?
Sounds great.
It was great talking to you,
Thank you,
and I know that everyone is going to enjoy you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In the early 1980s, Robert Bess was wrapping up his first decade of service to the United States Navy. He'd spent 2.5 years on the elite SEAL Team 3. He dedicated his life, he dedicated his last decade to serving our country abroad and here at home. And as an elite member of the Navy SEALs, he saw action that many people can't even dream of. But it was one day in 1981, just off the coast of San Diego, when he and his SEAL team were performing a standard training mission. He was the boat captain. When they would come in, they would parachute down onto these rafts, and then they would take these covert rafts, these boats, up onto shore, where they could secretly and discreetly get into enemy territory. And he was the first one that would get off of the boat. He would jump off and make sure that the boat was secure so that the rest of the SEAL team could get off and begin their mission. And this night, under the cover of darkness, the clouds were thick and the light of the moon and the stars was barely cracking through. The boat crested the water and came up on shore, and Robert, being the first one off as his job, his duty, his role, he jumped off and grabbed the front of the boat, set his feet to make sure that it was on a firm foundation for everyone else to be able to come off. And as he did, he sunk into a hole, and a wave came in and pushed the boat up over top of him. And when the wave came out, so did the boat, but his ankle, now stuck in a hole, didn't. He screamed out loud, immediately stopping the exercise as the rest of his team came running to his rescue, but it was too late. Multiple compound fractures to his ankle, to his foot, and to his leg. Months and months of rehab. Months and months of training. Months and months of recovery. A life dedicated to the United States Navy. A life dedicated to serving his country that he loved. And now he found himself spending hours every day rehabilitating a broken leg, not sure that he would ever be able to join his team again. It was almost a year before he sat down in the office of his commander. He'd gone through physical after physical, and they gave him the news. We just don't think that you're ever going to be able to go back to your SEAL team. We don't think that you're ever going to be able to join your brothers again in that place. Robert sat across the table from me with tears filling his eyes and said that in that moment he felt like he had lost a family. That the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the bond that came from his group of men in his SEAL team was unlike anything that he'd ever known, unlike anything that he'd ever experienced. And he looked across the table at the man who had just told him that his life would never be the same, that everything that he had dreamed of, everything that he had envisioned, everything that he had worked towards had suddenly been snatched away. And he said, "What can I do now?" He said, "Well, there are several jobs within the United States Navy that you're still qualified for. You just can't jump out of airplanes anymore. Your leg just simply won't hold the weight." So, well, what can I do where I can see the most action? What can I do that I can have the most impact? What can I do that will fulfill my need for adventure? What can I do that will utilize the special set of skills that the United States has trained me in? And a smile came across the face of the man across the desk. He said, "I think I've got just the job for you." What I'm about to tell you, the story that Robert shared with me that I'm about to share with you, and several of the other stories that you're going to hear tonight were classified for decades. In 2009, President Barack Obama declassified this story, making it possible for Robert to tell me, and for me in turn to tell you. Robert wanted to make it very clear that this story has in fact been declassified by the United States government. It was 1984. The United States was at the height of the Cold War. Tensions with the United States government and Russia were at an all-time high. Now, the United States was far more advanced when it came to marine warfare than the USSR. But there were rumors that the Russian had developed a new submarine, a nuclear submarine that was 10 years ahead of its time. If the rumors were true, it could completely change the entire outlook of not only the Cold War, but the safety of the entire world. It put everyone's life at risk if the rumors of this new Akula submarine were true. And so a group of men aboard the USS Pollock set out in 1984 off the coast of San Diego to begin a 10-day journey to the Petra-Pavlovska Peninsula in Russia. The journey would take them across the Sea of Japan, where they would stop and they would rest and they would fill up on supplies at the U.S. naval base there before they would make their final journey into the international waters and into the secret waters of the USSR. Over those 10 days, those 10 days submerged underwater, Robert said that life is dull. There's not much to do when you have 300 men crammed inside of a submarine submerged 800 feet underwater for 10 days. Now, in a submarine, everything is pressurized so that you stay submerged for days and days at a time, but every few days you have to come up to at least about a 50-foot depth in order to depressurize the cabin and be able to flush the tanks out of the submarine. If you tried to flush the tanks while you were at diving depth, the pressure would be too great, and instead of the water going out, the water would come in, and it would flood everything, and everyone would drown. And so every few days, they would surface enough to take some pictures, to look through the periscopes, survey the world around them, and most importantly, to flush their tanks. Now, the USSR had claimed a 4-mile perimeter around their borders as off limits, that no one could come anywhere close to them. Now the world's governments had agreed that these international waters ended at 4 miles out. 4 miles out of their seas was their land, and no ships could proceed beyond that 4-mile mark. But Russia had taken it a step further. Because they had such covert operations, because they had such top secret things that were taking place within their borders, they expanded the perimeter out to 12 miles. And had set notice that any ships that came within 12 miles of their border, well, those ships would be shot. Those ships would be taken down without any kind of warning. And so from 50 miles out, the USS Pollock with 300 men sunk to a diving depth of 800 feet and would spend the next 92 hours in code silent, radio black. Not a sound to be made. They would make their ways beyond that 12-mile marker into the 10, 8, 6, and into that 4-mile marker with the hopes of gaining critical intelligence that would be transmitted back when they could get back into safety of international waters on this rumored Akula submarine that the United States government and the rest of the world was so worried about. Robert Bess was radio talker first class. He was the head of the communications team that would listen for any sounds that they could hear, anything that they could give a clue as to what was going on. They had a team of translators inside the submarine that would listen to broadcasts that were coming on. They had a piece of coax cable that was a radio line that would go 2,000 feet behind the submarine, floating on the surface. So while they were 800 feet down, submerged in the water, this line would pick up transmissions from all around. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Robert and his crew would be listening intently for code words and any type of sign that they could get that there was any intel coming on the Akula submarine. Every few hours, they would hear a sound. Every few hours, they would go to attention and grab their ear sets closer and listen attentively to what was happening, but whoever was in command most of the time would turn and look and say, it's just a tugboat. And they would all go back to their business of waiting and hoping that they could find some sort of intelligence because the stakes were high. Then one day, about 92 hours into their journey, 92 hours that they had been in this hostile water, submerged 800 feet underground, they found themselves in a place where they heard a sound that they hadn't heard before. Over the speaker, one of the men said, "Someone call the captain. I don't think this is a tugboat." And they heard sounds that they'd never heard in their headsets before. It was time for a dump, so they decided they would make their way back up to the surface. And what they could tell as they were trying to decipher the different codes and the different language that was being passed around is that the Russians had gotten word that there was a U.S. submarine somewhere in the area. Somewhere in the vicinity, and Russia put their military on high alert. They sent out an ASW, anti-submarine warfare, that established a perimeter 15 miles along the peninsula. 15 different warships positioned all around the perimeter to keep any U.S. ships or submarines out of their sacred space. And when the USS Pollock rose up to periscope depth to make their dump and to take a look around, what they found was absolutely shocking. Not only were they inside the 4-mile perimeter, but they were inside the ASW zone. Russia knew that there was a U.S. sub close to their borders. But what they didn't know is when they set up the 12-mile anti-submarine warfare perimeter, they set it up with the USS Pollock already inside the perimeter. And they began to conduct 72 hours of tests on the Akula sub that Robert and his team of radio men captured everything. Going up, going down, speeding up, slowing down, test fires, test dives. They got it all on tape. Now, the problem with this was that being that they were inside of the perimeter, they were undetectable to the USS radar or sonar that was going out. They weren't broadcasting in, they were broadcasting out. But if they made even a sound, they knew that their lives would be over. So they went to a complete code silence, everything dark, for 72 hours. Unless they were on a critical command, they were to be in their bunks. For 72 hours, they were not allowed to flush a toilet. For 72 hours, they were not allowed to sneeze. For 72 hours, there was no cooking that was allowed to transpire. For 72 hours, no one was allowed to walk on the submarine with shoes on. For 72 hours, they weren't allowed to play cards. They weren't allowed to have a conversation. They weren't allowed to play music. They weren't allowed to broadcast anything. Complete radio darkness as they sat there 800 feet under the surface of the water, knowing that if one of them sneezed too loud, their life would be over. I asked Robert what it was like to be sitting 800 feet underwater in a metal tube, knowing that if someone literally dropped a pin, it could be the end of his life. It could be the end of all of their lives. And Robert looked at me and he said, there became a moment. There was a distinct moment when you realized that what we were doing was having implications that were far beyond our comprehension. The intelligence that we were gathering was so far beyond our scope of knowledge that the mission that we were on was so critical, not only to our own livelihood, but also to the welfare and safety of everyone around the world. There were literally millions of lives at stake that we were potentially saving in this moment. And in those moments, you realize that you're not simply doing this for your country. You're not simply doing this for the 300 men and women on that submarine with you. That you're doing this for the world. That we are literally on a mission to save the world. And in those moments, you know that you can't do it by yourself. But with the 300 men and women that are surrounding you, the 300 men and women that you have by your side, you can do anything. You can save the world. And in those moments, you really don't think of anything else except the brothers and the sisters beside you and the men and women whose lives you're changing forever that will never even know it. Robert served another 10 years in the U.S. military. He went on many, many more missions. Some that he told me someday he hopes to tell me, but right now they're still classified. So he can't tell me any of those stories right now. I have, over the course of the last few months, I've had the opportunity to sit down with many, many different veterans and record, as I said before, over 35 hours of interviews. I've heard stories of great victories that have taken place overseas. I've heard stories of great loss. I've heard stories that made me laugh so hard that I wanted to cry, and I've heard stories that have moved me so deeply that they brought tears to my eyes. But over the course of all of these hours spent with these veterans, these men and these women that have given their lives to serve our country, there have been a few themes that have carried through. And that is the theme of family. That when you serve our country in the United States military, it doesn't matter if you're in the Army, if you're in the Navy, if you're in the Air Force, if you're in the Marines. It doesn't matter if you're in the Coast Guards or you're in the reserves. There is a bond, a camaraderie that is formed that can never be broken. I had the great honor to sit down with James Murray, to hear him tell me some stories. And James told me a story that I want to share with you this evening. James told me the story that he grew up right down the street from here in Johnson City, Tennessee. And growing up, he had a dad that was in his life, but his dad really didn't play much of a role. He really wasn't a father figure, so as soon as he graduated from high school, he took the first opportunity that he could to enlist in the United States Army. And when he first got to boot camp, to basic training, his drill sergeant that he first met was Drill Sergeant Smock. And he said this man was the meanest man that I'd ever met in my life. He was the nastiest man that I'd ever met in my life. He was the orneriest man that I'd ever met in my life. He would make us do things, and then he'd make us do them again. And then he'd make us do them again just for the purpose of saying that he was able to make us do them again. And we would do things. He would run us until we were throwing up and we were passed out on the ground, and then he'd make us get up and do it all over again. He said he was the meanest, nastiest man that I'd ever met in my life, but he was the greatest man that I'd ever met in my life. Because at the end of each day, when he had run us into the ground, he would come over and he would sit down on a bench next to me and he would say, "Murray, how you doing today?" And James looked at me and he said, you know how many times my dad asked me how I was doing? He said, I'd only know this man for a while, and yet he was already more of a father to me than my own father had ever been. James Murray served the United States Army for over 22 years. He did 4 tours of duty in Afghanistan and 2 tours of duty in Iraq. He spent most of his life as a battalion engineer. He was on the front lines of going in and clearing the debris so the rest of the troops could come in. He was one of the first ones that would cross borders and go and make sure that the paths of landmines and IEWs and other dangerous paraphernalia and was cleared out of the way so that our troops could make their way through. Over his tours of duty, he told me that he had bombs blow up on him over 36 times. He spent much of his time in military hospitals recovering from injuries that he sustained. And he told me that if he could go back, he would go back again tomorrow. But physically, he's just not able anymore because of all of the injuries that he'd sustained. He was one of the men that was the very first to cross the lines over into Afghanistan. When we broke the line into Afghanistan, his battalion was the very first one to cross, and he was the third car to go over, the third vehicle to ever cross over into the lines. And he was serving on this battalion when he got a call in the middle of the night that they needed to go perform a rescue operation. That one of their platoons was down, and they needed to be rescued, and they needed out now. He said, I had a bad feeling as soon as I got the call. I knew that something was wrong. I couldn't explain what it was. It was just something inside of me that just didn't feel right. But I did what I always do. I put on my gear. I gathered my team. We hopped in the vehicles, and we began the journey, the 12-hour journey to where we knew that we would find our comrades. So when we got on site, most of the battle is over. Most of the firefight had ended. He said, and I could see across a long dirt road that we had a tank, and it had obviously been blown. And he said that feeling began to grow stronger and stronger inside of me. And even though I hadn't seen him in a while, I knew that I had to go and I had to carry out the body of Pollock. Said I had to go, and the man who had been more of a father to me than my own father, I had to go in on a rescue mission and carry him out. Said, and later that evening when they brought his body by us in a body bag, we all laid our hands on. So I'd never felt like I was more of a family than in that moment. I had the opportunity to sit down with Clarence Smith. Clarence Smith is a 94-year-old veteran of World War II. And in sitting down with Clarence, he began to tell stories that he said he hadn't told in 30 years. Stories that he hadn't thought about in decades. He told stories that made him laugh. He told stories that made him cry. And at the end of our time together, he went back into his room, into a closet, and he pulled out a shoebox that was wrapped around many times over with rubber bands. The top of the shoebox was covered in a blanket of dust. He brushed away the dust, and he undid those rubber bands. He took the top off, and he began to rummage through that box. As his voice began to quiver and his eyes began to fill with tears, he passed around the room these little black and white square photos. He said, you know who that man is in that photo? I'm guessing that's you, Clarence. That's me. Do you see where we're at? And he proceeded to tell the story of the journey, 18-day journey that he made from the harbors in New York City among a ship. 18 days to get over to the coast of France, where he was one of the first ones to run up the beaches of Normandy. He began to tell the stories of seeing the thousands and thousands of German troops, wave after wave after wave, as he described it. And then he passed around a little picture that he said, I haven't looked at this one. I haven't looked at this one in years. And he showed a picture of a friend of his that he said he had his arm around him on one side and his arm around another on the other, and he said, "That's me there in the middle." He said both of them died. They would be, goodness, I guess they would be in their mid to late 90s now. And he sat there in his rocking chair telling me story after story of the troubles that they would get to when they would get a night alone, the adventures that they would have in foreign countries, the women they would meet and the friends that they would make. And as he began to tell these stories and open up, I could sense that something was changing. There was a facade, there was a skin that was being peeled away. And years, decades of hurt, years and decades of sorrow, of nightmares and of questions began to unfold and peel away as he was telling story after story after story. And I sat there and looked in wonder. Mr. Clarence put that lid back on that box. He looked and he held out that little black and white picture. And he said, "You know, I didn't volunteer to fight in this army. I was drafted. Things were different back then. We didn't know that if we were going for 12 months or 15 months. We knew we were there until the war ended. We knew there was a good chance that we wouldn't be coming back. We knew there was a good chance that we'd never see home, that we'd never see the rolling hills of Tennessee again. But you know, it didn't matter, because I was fighting for my brothers beside me. I was fighting for the hope that this war would never make its way onto my Tennessee hills. And for that, for them, for you, I would do it all again. It's been an honor to sit down with these men and women, to hear their stories, to see the impact that their lives have had on our lives that so many of us will never even realize. Story after story, life after life, so often goes unspoken. And so my hope is that through this project, we can be able to tell, to preserve, and to cherish the stories of our soldiers, that through this, we can capture and preserve the voices of our veterans. Thank you guys so much.
Can you give another round of applause for Tony Marr? We enjoyed that. Okay, up next, Tom Swadley. I have to say a little bit about Tom. Tom Swadley is a fella I met through music, and we share a common love and a common bond, just like I'm sure with the military. Welcome Tom Swadley to the stage. I'll switch over to him.
This is working. We'll see.
Let's see. Give him check 1, 2. Okay. Check 1. Okay. I feel like I know a lot about you because we've known each other for a while through music. And Tom and I called and spoke with him for a few minutes, just kind of on the phone. He's told me his personal story before, and I wanted to make sure I had my facts right on a few things, though, so that's why I was trying to make sure I had everything right. Tom and his wife live in Bristol.
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
But Tom was born in Johnson City.
I was.
And he also served in the military.
I did. I served in the United States Air Force from January of 1969 to January of 1973. So I was served 4 years, and then I was on 2 years inactive reserve after that.
And when I was talking to you the other night, I was just, you know, you were one of those people that kind of came to my mind when the other Tom Hitchcock had asked, did I know any other veterans that were also musicians? You were literally the first person that came to my mind because you had intimately shared your story in my home when you came up.
Right.
Tom is with the band, the Celtic band Sheehan, and he's the guitarist for them and has been for ever, as
Since
long
the
as
inception. They can't get rid of me. I've been trying, and they won't let me go.
since forever. And he's also played many different genres of music over the course of your musical career.
Right,
But I had Tom, I had asked him up, I guess it's almost been 2 years ago now,
It has been.
when I was writing a song called The Journey, and who better to call and say, can you help me with this Celtic guitar? Because I don't know anything about the tunings. You do so many different things with the guitar. I think that some of the musicians in this area, they're just not familiar with it because it's not a typical tuning. I mean, a lot of them are drop D tuning, but not the full tuning to dadgad tuning. So I was kind of running out of options with, I need help with this tuning and somebody who's going to know. So you came to my mind with that. But when you were there talking with me in my home and my husband, you really opened up and you told me, you know, talked to me. I played Be Brave for you, but you also had told me your story about being in the military.
Sure.
And do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Like, where did you get to go? What all did you see while you were enlisted?
It was really interesting. I have to backtrack a little bit to 1968. I graduated high school in 1967. And when I say graduate, I mean I barely graduated. I was so horrible. It's a wonder they let me out. Probably just kicked me out to get rid of me out of South Hill High School. But I really was floundering around. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have the confidence to go to college because my grades were so horrible. And I was just floundering around, and come December of '68, I talked to the Air Force recruiter down here in Johnson City at the old post office, which is now WJHL television station, is what it is now. And I had been given some thought to enlisting, and I was horribly overweight, weighed about 240 pounds. And I was at the end of my rope. I didn't know what to do. I knew I was going to be drafted, but you just got to get that thing. You're afraid to do anything. You know, you don't know what to do. And some of my classmates had already been drafted in the Army or enlisted and went to Vietnam. So come January, actually the second week in January, I was notified that my draft status was getting very, very short. And I went down and enlisted in the Air Force and actually enlisted in Knoxville, Tennessee, and went away. And I think I told you this, and you even gave this. I was so naive. I'd never been away from home before overnight by myself. I was 19 years old and kind of scared and didn't know what was coming up, you know. And here I'd get on a plane out of Knoxville and go to Lackland, and like Tony was saying, that meanest man in the world was right there to greet me in basic training. And to be honest, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my whole life.
A lot of people say that. A lot of people say that.
It completely changed my life around, gave me a lot of direction. And I know people can't believe this, but in 7 weeks I had lost 70 pounds. I was down to 170 pounds. And then I had to start basic training because I was in a special little squadron to lose weight. They took me in that way. And so my confidence was really growing. And anyway, just to make a long story short, I went to technical training at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, for 4 months. Became a medical service, like a medical service technician. And then a very meaningful day in my life was when they came in and gave us our assignments. We had volunteered to go overseas, and a lot of, overseas was Vietnam. It wasn't any, that's what where everybody went. And the sergeant came in and was giving us our orders, and he said, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" And all of us said, "Well, we want the bad news, I guess, first."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, out of 12 of you, 8 of you are going to Cameron Bay Hospital in Republic of Vietnam." So I'm like, we all just, I was sitting on the front row, and he said, 4 of you are going somewhere else. So who does he call out first? My name.
But you had no idea
I had no
which
idea
way,
where it was,
which way it was
where I
going to go.
going. It was just the flip of the coin. The odds weren't good, 8-4. So he called my name out first, and he said, "You're stationed at R.F. Bentwater's 81st Attack Fighter Squadron in the United Kingdom." And I had to turn to a guy who was Air Force Reserve, who was there in the class too, and I said, "What's the United Kingdom?" And I was like, I didn't know it was England. If it said England, I was okay.
You would have been fine with that, yeah.
So anyway, I wound up serving in England for 3.5 years, and it was an incredible experience. I became a medic, full-time medic. I worked on a ward for a year. Then I got promoted. I got several promotions. My confidence was growing. I started taking classes at the University of Maryland, which had a little small unit on our Air Force base, a little school. And between the Air Force and the University of Maryland, I wrote them a very long letter quite a few years ago to the University of Maryland, thanking them for having that on there.
Yeah.
And I started really doing good, and that gave me some confidence to take college courses.
So you not only were in the military, you started your actual college
Absolutely.
education there too.
I
So
went to retainment at East Tennessee State University
Yeah.
in the fall of 1973, and I was very, very gung-ho. And when I mean gung-ho, I was going to make an A in every class. I didn't quite do that, but I tried. And I didn't, my partying days were over, and that was out the window, and I was concentrating fully on school. And then I got a BS degree in political science, 1977. And a couple of years later, I got a master's in city management from East Tennessee State.
and you went on to work for Bristol, for the city,
I
right?
worked in several different local government agencies for about 20, 25 years. And, but if I hadn't joined the Air Force, first of all, I've been drafted and sent to Vietnam in the Army. I mean, probably wouldn't have made it back, to be honest, because a lot of my classmates didn't make it back. But if I hadn't had that initiative and the discipline and the availability, the options, the schooling, the education, I wouldn't be sitting here where I am now.
Well, it opened a lot of doors for you, didn't it?
Right.
So, and made you the man that you are sitting here before us today.
I think it definitely did. I'm kind of retired from all that now. I work part-time in a little retail job, and my wife is full-time.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you do in your spare time now.
Oh, sure.
With music. Let's talk about the grandbabies. I see that all the time.
We've got 4 grandchildren, and two of which live up here in the Bristol area with us, and another one lives in Mississippi, and we have one little 2-year-old granddaughter that lives all the way down in Cookeville, Tennessee. So they're the light of my life, and my wife and myself, and I'd do anything for them. I'd give them any piece of candy they want.
That's right. That's what papas do. That's what.
I'll spoil them rotten.
So musically, though, you've kind of always had music.
Yeah, I have.
From a very, very early age too. You had said like around 12, 13 years old.
I was always listening to music when I was 3 and 4 years old, and it's mostly in church. I went to a very, very small church, a Presbyterian chapel over in Cache Hollow, which is in Washington County, around Johnson City. My dad was a superintendent, and I grew up in that church. And I was always listening to music. We had an old upright piano that probably was out of tune in 1910.
Right.
Right. Still was out of tune in 1953. So I was up there plinking out tunes on the piano after church, and my mother must have noticed that. And I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was just doing one little thing, and I would hear Standing on the Promises or, just gospel hymns that I'd heard, and I was picking out the melody. And she kind of filed that away, and years later, rock and roll came along, this was in the mid-1950s, I started listening to rock and roll and country music and a little bit of bluegrass and a little bit of everything. And I really just, I listened to as much stuff as I could, R&B and soul music. And then about 13, my mom laid away a guitar down at Albert's loan office in downtown Johnson City. And then she told my dad about it later. It was laid away, and he had to go down there and get it out.
Yeah.
And he said, "What guitar?" And she said, "Well, the one you need to pay off $30 off and get him this guitar." So I got that guitar, and I started plinking around on it for a year. I was like 13, and it didn't work. It was just, you've seen the pawn shop guitars, their strings are about that high off the neck, and they're very hard to play.
Sounds like what I learned on.
Yeah, I think everybody,
I think
any
they
guitar
do.
players had that experience, or musician, or banjos, or fiddles that don't exactly play right. And then about a year later, I fell in with some friends of mine that had electric guitars, and lived down on Market Street in Johnson City, and they only played one kind of music, and it was blues.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Jimmy Reed, if you know anything about blues music, and Jimmy Reed was a guy from Texas that invented 12-bar blues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as many bars as he was always in 12 bars, because he was pretty intoxicated.
I love it, yeah.
Most of the time. But that's the kind of stuff I really got comfortable with when I started playing their electric guitars, and eventually my mom and dad got me one too. So we formed a band in high school, and it's kind of went from there.
I think that we have a lot of similarities even musically, because just you love music and I love music. So it's hard to stay to one genre. So I think that you are kind of all across the board with, and a multi-instrumentalist, I'll say that too. Yeah. So you don't just love acoustic guitar, you do love electric guitar.
I have electric guitars, and they can get very loud, as my wife can testify. She's sitting out there and shaking her head probably. We should turn those down sometimes, I'm sure. But I love blues and rock and roll and bluegrass and obviously Irish music, which I've been playing for the last 23 years with Sheegan. And but anything that strikes my fancy, I like to listen to. I try to learn, and it could be a little bit of everything. I've tried, even some metal stuff. And I had a series on Facebook in 2018 where I did a new guitar riff every week and posted it. And some of them were really good, some of them were like, not so good.
I enjoyed that. Because I never knew you did not, you never knew. You never knew what you were going to do. You did one really heavy metal, I can't remember which one.
Well, it was it was a group called, I can't think of the name of it now. Well, I did a Metallica riff. I did Enter Sandman, which was kind of far away from anything that I could ever do in my life. That was fun.
But you did it. You totally pulled it off. You're that well-rounded, and are you ready to perform a little bit for the audience tonight?
We can do that.
I'm so excited.
Sure.
I think everybody is going to just fall in love with you and just be amazed by your talent.
Well, I'll give them my best.
I know you will. I know you will. And are you going to do Alone first for a few songs?
Yeah, I'll do.
Do you want to kind of tell them briefly what you're going to do, and then?
Sure. I'm going to. Well, let me get this off. I'm going to do an instrumental tune first, and then I'm kind of go down a few little things on some Carter family stuff, and a little bit of blues, a little bit of everything.
You're going across the board with us tonight too. All right.
All kinds of different stuff.
I'll let you get set up for the music.
Thanks, Julie, for having me over here. We'll do an instrumental tune first. It's an original tune I wrote last year, actually about the same time of the year, in early September. And I'd heard about a friend of ours who passed away down in Florida last year under very tragic circumstances. And she was a friend of a lot of people in Bristol. She always went to Rhythm and Roots, and it really hit a lot of my friends really hard. And I was I didn't know what to do. I guess when I don't know what to do, I start picking up a guitar and writing or messing around on the guitar a little bit. And this is dedicated to her and her life. She's a very positive person from what I've heard. And her name was Mitzi Campbell. So this is Mitzi Campbell's. Thank you, thank you. A bit sometimes. This is a little medley I put together a few years back. I was sitting downtown in Bristol looking at the Bristol mural. Have y'all ever been to the Bristol mural downtown? How many people have been there? It's really a cool place. If you look on the mural, which is where the bus station is downtown, you'll see 3 groups of musicians. One of them is the Carter family, the other one is the Stoneman family, and the last person is Jimmy Rogers. And that was, of course, celebrated the Big Bang of country music in 1927 when you had the Bristol recordings. So this is a little medley of things. I was just looking at it one day and I said, let's just put something together, you know what I'm going to say. My heart is sad and I'm in sorrow, thinking of the one I love. Oh, I see her not ever till we meet in heaven above. She told me that she didn't love me, couldn't believe that it was true. Till all the angels softly whispered, she no longer cares for you. So bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree. Then she will know where I'm sleeping, maybe then she'll thank me. I sit all around the water tank, waiting for a train 1,000 miles away from home, just to sleeping in the rain. I walked up to a brakeman just to give him a line of talk. He said, if you've got the money, then you won't have to walk. I haven't got a nickel, not a penny can I show. I said, get off through the railroad bum, and he slammed the boxcar door. Your lady. Riding on that new river train, riding on that new river train, that same old train that brought me here, it's gonna carry me away again. Darling, you can't love one, darling, you can't love one, you can't love one, have any fun, darling, you can't love one. Riding on that new river train, riding on that new river train, that same old train that brought me here's gonna carry me away
Darling, you can't love two. Darling, you can't love two. You can't love two and still be true. Darling, you can't love two. I'll pick one. Darling, you can't love three, not three. Darling, you can't love three. You can't love three and still love me. Darling, you can't love three. Riding on that new river train. Riding on that new river train. That same old train that brought me here's gonna carry me away. One more time. Thanks, folks. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a little instrumental now, and it's one I learned a long time ago that I learned off a Norma Blake album, and I know it's older than Norma Blake, believe me, and I tried to copy, I steal everything I could off Norma Blake. If y'all know anything about Norman, he's worth stealing from. I saw him many times at the Down Home over in Johnson City and East Tennessee State University, and just a little bit of a side story. When I was at East Tennessee State University in 1974, 75, I think in that neck of the woods, I saw two concerts in a row, 2 weeks apart, that convinced me or led me to start playing acoustic music rather than some loud rock and roll stuff. And the first one was Norman and Nancy Blake, and a great fiddle player named Charlie Collins. And the second one, about 2 weeks later, almost exactly 2 weeks later, was the incredible John Hartford. So those two things, and then shortly after that, the Down Home opened up in Johnson City, and I think I was standing out on the sidewalk when they opened up. And so I got to see many good concerts there, but this is a real old-time fiddle tune called Bully of the Town. Thanks a lot. It's been a while since I've done that one, that's for sure. And by the way, I'm used to playing with 6 other people on a stage, so this is kind of weird getting up here. I'll do an open mic every once in a while, so this is very strange being up here by myself. But we're going to remedy that before too long. We'll get some people up here playing with me, and we'll see where it goes. This is I'd mentioned, started out playing the blues, and this is the next one is definitely kind of a blues song. And not Delta kind of blues, more Piedmont. If you know the difference, the Piedmont blues, like if you've heard that kind of, this has got that little bit of the stuff in it. And I was a little questioning a little bit about playing this one, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I don't think there's any kids in the audience. Maybe there is. I don't know. Well, it doesn't have any cuss words in it or anything, so. I was careful to monitor myself about not get this. That Mount Scott tournament, looking at that girl that sells cocaine. Cocaine is running all around my brain. You take Sally, I take Sue. There ain't no difference between the two. Cocaine is running all around my brain. Oh, mama, come here quick. Oh, cocaine's about to make me sick. Cocaine is running all around my brain. I went to the doctor the other day. The doctor said, "Hey son, it says here you're 27. That's impossible." Come here quick. Cocaine about to make me sick. Cocaine running all around my brain. That's from the old days, sitting around a campfire, or my wife, we're sitting on the back porch thinking stuff like that. So, going to do one now, and this instrument, by the way, is an Irish bouzouki, and if I'm going through an airport, I call it an octave mandolin. So we don't get any problems with the homeland security issues. No, I'm just kidding. I don't go through airports. But originally, just a little bit of background about it, since I'm bringing it out now. It was originally, obviously, a Greek instrument. But back in the mid-'60s, late '60s, very early '70s, some Irish musicians started going over to Greece and thinking it would be a really good instrument to back up Irish tunes with. So they brought it back and started experimenting with it. There's a lot of those same people still playing those instruments. Well, they got new instruments. But originally, the ones they brought back were called bowlback. If you've seen Greek bouzoukis, they had like a bowl back here. And then they started getting their own made, and they were flat back like this one. So this one I got a few years ago from a friend of mine in Bristol. And I'm going to do a couple of things on it. and hopefully I don't drop it and break it. Just think it doesn't hold up on me here. But the song I'm going to do is the oldest song that I know, and it's called Bonnie George Campbell, and it's it's about a battle that happened in 1528, the Battle of Glenlivet. And this man, apparently, who was a Scottish earl, got killed in the battle. And this song was written about him, originally obviously unaccompanied. And it came down through the ages and wound up in a book called The Child Ballads. And The Child Ballads was written by a man named Francis Child, who was an American late 19th century musicologist and song collector, and he spelled Childe, so he had an E on the end of child. And this song happened to be in there, along with bunches of other ones you probably heard of, like Barbara Allen and a few of the other really older English, mostly English and Scottish ballads. There weren't really any Irish ballads that he collected that I know of in there. But other musicians have obviously played them from time to time in Irish music. But this, incidentally, we do one of another song out of that catalog or that book called The Month of January in Washougal, and it's right in there too on the top 100 hit parade of sad Irish ballads, or sad ballads where everybody dies in the end. But this particular song was done in recording by some really good friends of mine up in New York called the Murphy Beds, and this is kind of what I based my version of it on. And they did a killer recording of it about 6 or 7 years ago. And to me, we've been speaking about veterans tonight. This fits perfectly. It's kind of an anti-war song that's translated all the way down through the ages, and it still holds true today. A man goes off to war, doesn't come back, his family mourns, and there's a big hole in their lives. And I hope one day we get to in a place in our country where we don't have to send young men and women off to war anymore. And this is kind of when I'll send this out to. But it's called Bonnie George Campbell. George Campbell went out on a day, saddled and bridled, so gallant rode he. Home came his good horse, but never came he. Home came his good horse, but never came he. Saddled and bridled and booted rode he, with a plume in his helmet and a sword by his knee. Home came his saddle, so bloody to see. Home came his good horse, but never came he. Home came his good horse, but never came he. Down came his mother with a heart full of care, and down came his lovely bride, a tear in her hair. The meadow was green and the crops were unshorn, the house was unfinished and the babies unborn. The house was unfinished and the babies unborn. And low upon Tay, Bonnie George Campbell went out on a day. Home came his son, the bloody sea. Thank you so much. Thanks. That was the last tune, which I forgot to announce, was a little jig that I wrote when I was trying to learn that song. The song was so mournful and so it got to you. It gets to me now when I sing it. And I was trying to think of something a little more upbeat and lively just to put with it. And I wrote that tune. It's a jig called The Forks of Ivy. If you're heading over toward Asheville on the Interstate 26, you will see a little exit called The Forks of Ivy. So that was where that came from. Anyway, let's get back to guitar playing. I'm going to do another blues tune. Tuner on this one. The other guitar I've been playing, by the way, if you're interested, is in dadgad tuning. That's why I'm switching back and forth, because I'm doing some in dadgad and some in standard tuning. And this one's going to be in drop D. And an interesting story about this song, it was first recorded in 1928, about the time this theater was opened up. And you never know, this person that wrote the song, he was an itinerant street musician from Atlanta, Georgia, may have been up in this area playing, you never know. And he wrote this song, and it kind of propelled him to actually quite a bit of fame. He lived until about 1952. But he was a 12-string player called Blind Willie McTell. And then the song just sat there all these years. And then 40 years later, it was recorded again by a tremendous traditional musician who's, to me, is one of the best people I've ever heard in my whole life, named Taj Mahal. And if you've ever heard of Taj Mahal, but he recorded it on his initial album in 1968. And he had a great guitar player, a Native American guitar player called Jesse Ed Davis, playing with him, playing slide guitar. And the reason I'm throwing this Jesse Ed Davis thing in, the way that Taj did it was electric, it was upbeat, and it was not like that original thing at all. It just had a lot of the same words and the same feeling of it and everything. And there was a young guitar player that was about 22 years old, sitting out in California with a busted up arm, and he had a bad cold. And his brother was out there with him recording music, and they had a band called Hourglass. And the reason I'm telling this story is leading up to the third recording of this song. Well, it's been recorded other times too, I'm sure, but these are the three that are most important, I guess, to me. And the young guitar player is a guy named Dwayne Allman. And he got a hold of this album, and his brother told the story that his brother, Dwayne, was so mad about having a busted up arm that he just threw the album up on the edge of the porch and knocked on the door and ran off from it. And Dwayne happened to be taking Coricidin for his busted up arm, elbow, and what he did, as soon as he heard Jesse Ed Davis playing slide guitar, he threw the medicine away, tore the thing off the thing, and started playing slide guitar himself. And the rest is obviously history. They turned into the Allman Brothers, and they recorded that song on the Live at the Fillmore East album. So without giving too much away, the song's called Statesboro Blues. But I can't do it like Dwayne and Todd. There's just no way, unless I have a big rock band up here with me, I just can't. My version is more like the original version. Said, wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. Wake up, mama, lamp down low. Ain't you got no nerve to jump from your door? Once loved a woman, she's better than I'd ever seen. And I once loved a woman better than I've ever seen. She treated me like a king, and she was a doggone queen. And my mother died and left me reckless, and Papa died and left me wild, wild, wild. Mama died and left me reckless, and Papa died and left me wild. No, I ain't good looking, but I'm some sweet woman's angel child. Had to dig a less Savannah, Lord, it would not stop, y'all. I heard the big old fireman when it got them boys hot. Reach on the corner, mommy hammering my traveling shoe. And I think by now I got them Statesboro blues. Mama got 'em, Papa got 'em, Andy got 'em, sister got 'em, everybody got 'em, hammering my traveling shoe. I think by now I got them Statesboro blues. Said, reach on the corner, mama, hand me my traveling shoes. Reach on the corner, mama, hand me my traveling shoes. I think by now I got them Statesboro blues. Thank you, folks. Okay, if Frank can make his way up to the stage here with his fiddle and banjo, we're going to do some Irish tunes for you. Please give a hand to Mr. Frank Wing from out here in Elizabethton. My Keegan bandmate, and it's not true that he was at the opening of the Bonnie Cade in 1926 or whenever it was. He was many years after that. I think 1929 is when he first came.
I just heard about it.
Are you ready? This is a 4-part Irish reel called Farewell to Erin, which is what people say when they're leaving the west coast of Ireland for America. That's goodbye to Ireland.
This thing was in tune when I left the house. So I don't know what it's going to say.
Is it picking up a... Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll take the cape off now and maybe retune this. We're going to do a set of jigs for you.
Oh, yeah. Be good.
We have to keep the world completely in balance. If we do a reel, we have to do a set of jigs to follow. So the world's completely in balance. If you come out and see us, we're playing, I hope we make a little bit of a commercial about our band. We're playing next on the 14th of September up in Big Stone Gap, Virginia for Big Stone Celtic. We'll be there playing 3 times during the day. So that's a free festival on the 14th of September in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. So if you get a chance, come on up, and then we'll be at Homecraft Days and also in Big Stone on the 19th of October. It's a huge 3-day festival. I can't hear that. Yeah, there's Big Stone Gap.
Yeah.
There's something in Big Stone, yes. Okay, we're going to do a set of jigs called, as I said, Tripping Up the Stairs, and which we, thank goodness, none of us did tonight yet.
We got to get down.
We still got to get down from here. Tripping Up the Stairs and the Cliffs of Moore, which is we'll just do them 2 each. Ready?
Yeah. What'd you just say?
2 each.
2 each.
Tripping Up the
2
Stairs.
each?
2 each. 2 each.
What happens in 2 weeks? I forgot.
1, 2, 3,
What's the
4.
tune again?
Tripping Up the Stairs.
Oh, that tune. Okay.
You have to-
These things all sound alike.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you so much. And we're going to get Gabe and Julie up here, and Frank's going to get his 5-string banjo. And we're going to do a real old-time mountain ballad here, and digging way back. This one. Frank's not only a great fiddle player, he's probably the best 5-string player I know around here anywhere. So we're lucky to have him in our band. He's been in our band for 20 years this year, thank goodness. I don't know what we'd do without him. And that's a long time to be in one band. Our band was formed in 1997 up in Bristol in February of 97. And kind of like the sole surviving original band member left. So, but we're hanging in there. We continue to play. So. I did want to thank Julie and Gabe again, and Tom and the folks at the Bonnie Kate. And Tony, is you still here, Tony Marr? He'd leave?
No, he had to leave.
Oh, he had to leave. Well, he did a fantastic job, and my hat's off to him, being a veteran myself. And what he's doing is fantastic work. And not many people would commit to helping out veterans and with their stories and things and helping them any way they can. And I'm always available to help out anybody I can that's a veteran. This song I'm going to do, I've known about it for about all my life, but I didn't start playing it until quite a few years ago. I got into a bluegrass jam session over here at the old Slagle's pasture. I don't know how many of y'all remember that festival. I guess Julie, it might have been before y'all's time.
No, I'm old.
Okay, well,
I
I
remember
gotta
it,
say,
I'm
I
old.
know Frank would remember it. But I got over there one night with some friends of mine from Bristol and they must have been, gosh, 25 people playing on this song, and it kind of went on and on and on. We're not going to let it go that long. But it went on for about 30 minutes, and there was a lot of whiskey bottles being passed around that night, let me tell you. And this song's called Wild Bill Jones, and it's been one of my favorites to play for a lot of years. And just started playing it in this tuning, which is a really interesting modal kind of tuning. And it kind of fits it a little bit, and hope it do a little bit of justice. And here we go. Wild Bill Jones is an old murder ballad. Ready? Well, I went out for to take a little walk. I walked upon that Wild Bill Jones. He was walking and talking by my little girl's side. I said, "Honey, won't you leave him alone?" He said, "My age, it is 21 years. We want for to be controlled." He drawed my revolver from my side, and I destroyed that poor boy. So I Frank. Well, he reeled and he staggered and he fell on the ground and he gave one dying moan. He throwed his arms around my little girl's neck saying, "Honey, won't you please take me home?" So pass around that old long neck bottle. Let's all go on a spree. Today's the last of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow I'll see the last of me, and I'll pick it. Handcuffs on me, boys, and march me till the break of day. I got no friends nor relations there, no one for to go my bail. So pass around that long neck bottle, let's all go on a spree. Today's the last of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow I'll see the last of me. Everybody pick it down. So pass around that long neck bottle. Let's all go on a spree. We saw the last of Wild Bill Jones. Tomorrow see the last of me. Thank y'all. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
Tom.
for having me out here. We had a good time. Thanks, Frank. Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Julie and Gabe. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Tom down here running the sound and lights and cameras and anything else I'm leaving out? Nope, that covered it all. Oh, wow. Next month. Well, it's not official yet, so this is subject to change. It's an itinerary that I have. I'm hoping to do an all-female show next month, showcasing some different female songwriters from the region, and I've already got one confirmed. So hopefully we can get it together for next month. But we've had a great evening tonight. Please spread the word about this. But you're welcome to bring your own food. Bring as many people as you would like. That's great. That's a thought. But we've had a wonderful evening. I feel like Tom and Tony Marr, thanks to everyone that was involved with this. We're trying to keep Bonnie Kate alive, people. Help. Help us. Yes, thank you for a wonderful evening.